Fantasy Island is a extremely beautiful and very mysterious island where guests go to make their wildest dreams come true. And the guests in the movie realize very soon that something's a little off with the island, and they learn that they have to be very careful what they wish for.
You get one wish, and the only rule is that once you make your wish or tell your wish, you have to follow your fantasy through to the end.
Fantasy Island is a revisiting of the Fantasy Island story from the 80s with a sinister twist.
And it is awesome and scary and frightening, and I'm not sure if I'm going to see it because I don't do well in horror movies, but I'm gonna give it a shot.
When I first read the script, it's definitely something that I would personally watch myself, which is usually my barometer on doing a project or not. Like, can I take me and all my buddies and my family to go watch this? And the answer is a definite yes, because it's just so exciting. So many twists and turns, so many cool characters, and just good fantasy.
Very quickly, we realized that our fantasies become nightmares, that we're, despite being in paradise, we're now in hell.
Okay, so there are two very important rules to Fantasy Island. Number one fantasy per guest. You only get one wish, one fantasy. And rule number two is you have to see your fantasy out to its natural conclusion. So, you know, you just have to follow it through. And so as you see for the guests, that becomes very tricky and very scary pretty early on.
I play Mr. Rourke, and his role in the island is he's the host of all the guests here, and he's the one who grants and monitors everyone's wishes. And he has one particular rule that you must play every fantasy out to its natural conclusion. That could be the good or bad.
Let's start with the fact that we have fans of the show, which is great, which is obviously an older audience. And then you have fans who remember the show because of the generation right before them. So it's in their heads, you know, they have a familiarity with the name. And then the rest of the people are just people who have no clue what it is and have never heard the term before. And so I think that across the board, we've owed properly kind of to the property that existed. And then I think that within that world, we created something that's new.
Fantasy Island was a show, and this is definitely a different take on the concept. A lot more horror involved, and I don't know, it's a place where your fantasies go wrong.
Our Fantasy Island is very different and very new because I tried to approach the property from the point of view of someone who wasn't familiar with the show. I thought there's two reasons to take pre-existing IP and turn it into a new film or TV. It's either that you believe there's a huge fan base for the original material, or you just think the original was a good idea. And with our movie, I really feel that Fantasy Island falls into the latter category. It was just a great idea. It was a great show with a lot of potential. And so I wanted to use that potential and expound upon it and be inspired by it to create an entirely new story for a new audience.
So whether you know it or not, you don't need to have that familiarity with the title to be able to enjoy what it is that we've created. And I think that's the magic of what Jeff did and the writers did, is that with respect to what existed, they were still able to bring something new and lively to what people might not expect from the film.
What would happen if your fantasies went wrong? Because they most definitely do go wrong in this movie.
This is the ultimate wish fulfillment movie. You have a fantasy, you have a wish, and you go to an island and it comes true. Now, I love the idea of that kind of happy idea layering when it comes true, things go very wrong.
This version of Fantasy Island is definitely a Blumhouse movie because we are not afraid to go dark. There's definitely a sinister feeling to the film that pervades every scene, and there's a lot of twists, a lot of mystery. There are some questions about what's really going on.
So this movie, Fantasy Island, is flipping the idea of having your wildest fantasies come true and then suffering the consequences for it. It's rough. It's beautiful, but it's terrifying.
I love our cast. I will say, like, off camera, our cast has really gelled. We've been having an amazing time together and finding ways to just have fun. I mean, not that it's hard to have fun in some place like Fiji, but you know, everyone has different working styles, so it's been really refreshing to be able to connect with all these different people who have very different backgrounds and experiences, and I feel like the camaraderie really shows on screen.
Michael Peña's been great as Rourke, of course, played by original Mr. Montalban himself. And it's a little reminiscence, but he really makes it his own, as Michael does with all of his great characters. And he's just so in the moment. He kind of captures you as you're acting with him. He captures you in an aura of mystery that only he can deliver. So that really helps you as an actor, you know. And I'm sure the audience would feel a bit of that I felt on set, and it's very cool.
It's actually really inspiring, you know, to have that kind of energy and people really care about the work. It's kind of cool, like, because it's, you know, this world is basically all, you know, out of Jeff Wadlow's head is, you know, pure imagination. So you really need some dedicated actors to make this come to life, and they've been killing it, crushing it, all of them.
Jeff Wadlow is our amazing, energetic, fast-paced director. I really enjoy working with him. I come from an athletic background with coaches who have that same kind of energy that he has. When I get to work, I want to go. I want to shoot, and I want to shoot hard, and feel like we have exhausted all of our opportunities.
Honestly, this movie, you should just walk into it knowing you're gonna have so much fun. There's twists and turns, and it's a suspense thriller, and it's one of those whodunit kind of movies. You don't know, obviously, until the end who's in charge of all the chaos. But each character, there's so much to each character that doesn't meet the eye, which I think is really interesting. You kind of get to unfold each character, like peel back the layers a little bit, which is cool. But yeah, it was a blast to make. It's a blast to watch, and it's got that classic Blumhouse feel to it as well.
I mean, it is a Blumhouse movie, and it had to have a scary element to it. There's a supernatural element, there's a thrilling element, blah, blah, blah. So we have all of those things, and those things are all very entertaining. So I think you'd go into a movie like this expecting to be just flat out entertained, but I think you really are going to feel things for these people. And I think that there isn't one character that you're not going to be able to relate to, or even if you relate it to only one, there's at least one that you will feel something for your own reasons.
That's always like exciting to kind of, you know, imagine what your fantasy would be. And so you get to go along the ride of multiple different characters and see what they would do. And I think that that's all something we think about. Like, if you could have one fantasy on this island, what would it be?
What you want is not necessarily what's best for you, especially in the moment. And I think if there's any takeaway from the movie, it's that things happen in life for a reason, and you may not, at the time, you may think, oh, I wish it had happened differently, but ultimately your life is laid out in a certain way. It's kind of there's a spirituality to the movie, I guess, a little bit, and you should leave that alone and not tempt fate.
When we started making this movie, the message for fans was, first and foremost, come have fun. You know, it's an incredible location. It's an amazing cast. I think it's a really fun story. So just come and have a good time. And in the middle of winter on Valentine's Day, come to Fantasy Island. It's going to be thrilling. It's going to be scary. It's quite funny. It's surprisingly emotional.
It's something to do with, like, the fact that it can really happen, and like something that you always wish for, like, oh, I really wish I could always do this or have this or be this. And then so now's a chance. So I'm sure that different people are gonna relate to different storylines. And then they're also gonna have to deal with the consequences of that storyline, which is a great psychological insight and a great hook.
People should see this if they want to have a great time. People should see Fantasy Island if they want to have fun, if they want to sit down with their friends after a movie and talk about what different things meant. Because we are doing that. We talk about the meaning of different things because this is a movie that's thought out. And to me, as a horror fan, and particularly a horror fan who wants films that that have substance to them, this is one you should watch.
What better place to see these fantasies unfold in one of the most beautiful locations in the world? You know, I really think that juxtaposition is something that audiences are going to love.
I think a lot of the older audience might know the franchise, and this is such a departure from that, but yet still some fun discoveries that are similar to the old franchise, right? But at the same time, I feel like it's more exciting, it's bigger, it's cooler, it's more Blumhouse, it's more thrilling, it's newer, you know? And for the younger audience who's never heard of Fantasy Island, it's a franchise that they're gonna love because it incorporated all the old elements of what made Fantasy Island awesome, and it's beautiful, and it's Blumhouse, and it's thrilling, so it's gonna be great for everyone.
You know, this isn't the campy version of Fantasy Island. This is real people dealing with regret and having the one chance to reverse it, which becomes incredibly heartfelt and touching. And I think that audiences will be moved by each of these characters' storylines and how they end up coming to terms with the events of their past.
So we just wanted people to go on a trip and have an adventure. I would say after that kind of idea, it became much more about reinforcing this notion that you can't live in the past. That's a big theme for the film. All the stories that they learn over the course of the film that they can't live in regret, that they have to move forward, and if they're doing anything other than that, they're going to create problems in their own lives.